camera and
Uh,
video?
Not necessarily. Dear colleagues, hello, hello. It's 2 minutes before we start our day two conference. And while you are joining in, please use the chat box to mark that you see us both and that you hear us. Me, you hear me. And if it is possible for you, please type from what part of Ukraine or not Ukraine, maybe you are abroad, you are joining in. Окей, Germany, Коломия, Черкаси region, Полтава, Дніпро, Харків, Полтава, Миколаїв, Тернопіль, Херсон, Мукачево, again Дніпро. Kiev is here, Житомир is here, Vyshgorod is not far from Kiev, Bravary is not far from Kiev, Житомир, Бердичев, Ivano-Frankivsk. And now I am not following Irpin. Irpin is, David, you know, Irpin is 4 kilometers from the place where I live. We're
Okay.
very close to each other. Mykolaiv, Kharkiv, Brovary, and it is 3 p.m. Kiev time. And it is day 2 of Macmillan Back to School online conference. And I'm Ina Nistaiter, and I work for Macmillan Education Ukraine. And today we have a very special speaker, whom many of you might know in person, many of you know only via online. Before I give the floor to David Spencer, 3 very short announcements. First announcement that this conference is being recorded, and in some days you will get the link to the recording. The second announcement is that you will get the certificate for today's conference. And if you attended yesterday's conference, you probably already received the certificate. And announcement number 3, which is very important, please make sure that you are in the safe place, because your safety is above all. So David, with great pleasure, I'm giving the floor and all the participants to you.
Thank you very much, Ina. It's great to be here. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Oh, wait. Actually, I'm going to do that again. Sorry, because I did forget. Wait. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Ina, for the introduction. It is a real pleasure to be with you today. As Ina said, I imagine that the most important thing is that everybody is safe and secure while watching this. It's a real pleasure to be with you. And as Ina said, maybe some of you know me actually personally. Because as I'm going to show you here with my first slides, I have been to Ukraine before. I was lucky enough to go to Ukraine. My first trip was in 2012, the first time I went. I have actually been to Ukraine 3 times. I was lucky enough to go 3 times. I visited different cities. So I've been in Kiev, obviously, several times, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Odessa, and Belya Tserkov. And also I have had the honor of giving some special webinars for Ukraine in the past. And I think this is my webinar number 8. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to be talking about 2 different things today. My first talk will be about mixed abilities, diversity, and inclusion. And for my second session, I have been asked to give you an introduction to the latest version of Gateway, which is Gateway to the World. And Ina also is going to be telling you a little bit about that, because we have a very special version of the book, which is unique to Ukraine. So we're really excited to show that to you later. So my first talk is, as I say, about diversity, inclusion, mixed abilities. And I can already see in the chat box that you're very, very active. And that is what I love about webinars. I really would like you to help me today by participating as much as possible in the chat box. I'm going to ask you some questions today. And each time I ask you a question, the more answers in the chat box, the better. I think it's great for all of us so that you are part of this very special webinar. So I'm going to begin by explaining, here I am actually, I forgot to show you my proof of me being in Ukraine in the good old days, right? Yeah, very memorable trips. I have lots more photographs actually, lots more photographs of people in talks. And yeah, and I'm hoping that one day I'm going to come back, okay? So let's always hope from the best. Hey, hello from Liverpool. Natalia, does that mean that you're in Liverpool? You know that I'm from Liverpool, right? That is my hometown. That makes me very emotional. But yeah, I don't know, Natalia, if you're actually in Liverpool or not, but that would be amazing. So yes, you've seen my photographs. I've been in Ukraine several times, 3 times, as I've said. Let's begin the talk. What do we mean when we talk about diversity and inclusion? Well, I'm going to tell you what I mean. I think that I'm going to explain this in detail, but when we're in the classroom, we teach a class, but we also teach all of the individuals in that class. It's like doing 2 different things at the same time. And I think that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and they are 2 words which we talk about more and more in education today, we're talking about being aware of the differences that exist between the individual students in our classes and how we can deal with this question. How can we make sure that we engage, respect, and support all of these different individuals in the classroom? And I would like to ask you for some help before I begin. What do you think are the differences between our individual students? So in any class, whether we have 10, 20, 30 students, there are always lots of differences that exist between individual students. What differences could you suggest to me now that exist between our students? Can you just put your ideas in the chat box and then I'll share my ideas. So different abilities, right? Okay. Different learning styles. That's interesting. Gadgets available is interesting. Motivation is definitely a really big issue. And I like the word there, tempers. Yeah, different tempers, kind of moods that people are in. There are lots of them, yeah. Different cultural backgrounds, very, very important, right? So in any class, we might have people from different cultural or even racial backgrounds. Likes and dislikes is a very, very, very important issue too, I think. And characters, yeah. Extroverts and introverts. Thank you very much, Tatiana. And I'm going to talk about that in specifically later in the session. Motivation, age, the speed that they work. Nadia, that is really important. And I'm going to talk about that too in this session today. Learning styles, great. Well, I'm going to share my screen, my slide with lots of ideas. And you've mentioned many of these, okay? So levels of proficiency and aptitude. So some people are just better than others at, for example, English or at maths or at certain subjects. Motivation. Many of you have mentioned the question of different levels of motivation. And some people might be motivated about learning maths, but not motivated about learning English. Each student's motivation depends according to their attitude towards the subject and also maybe towards the school. Maybe some people feel demotivated about school in general. So I think that motivation and attitude are key. Many of you have also mentioned this question of preferred learning styles, which I think is really important. Active versus passive. What I mean is that some students in my class, they contribute actively, like you are doing in the chat box today, but some of them prefer just to sort of sit back and watch, but not really be involved. So that's also a difference, I think, between students. Many of you have mentioned the question of personalities. So Lena, I think it is, if I'm reading the alphabet correctly, has just mentioned personalities. People have different personalities. And as somebody mentioned before, and I will mention it again, some are very extrovert and some are introvert. And I think that sometimes makes a difference about how and how much English students learn. Interests and hobbies. So they've got like different questions there of how, what things they're interested in. So it might be music, it might be sport, whatever it is. Cultural and linguistic background. Somebody mentioned this before, cultural differences between our students. Parental expectations and interest. And personally, as a teacher of teenagers, I think this is important because it's not only the students that we're teaching, but we also have to take into account parents. Some parents are extremely ambitious about how much English their child is learning, and some maybe are slightly less ambitious. So I think that what parents think is also important to us. Also, I think the interpersonal relationship with other classmates. So some students maybe are very popular with their classmates, some are less popular, some maybe have problems with their classmates, and this also affects the way that each individual learns in the class. And somebody mentioned the word before, temper, and my variation on that is the word mood. So how are they feeling today? That could also affect how they respond in the classroom. Maybe somebody's tired, maybe they have a particular problem. Obviously, in your case, you have like incredible problems, I imagine, with the way that students feel each day when they wake up, and that is going to affect the way they feel in your class. So all of these differences exist, I think, between our students. Now, today, what I'm talking about is a kind of balance between two different things. This quotation is from somebody very famous in the ELT world, Mario Rinvolucri. Maybe you recognize the name. He said in this article, "We do not teach a group, but 30 separate people. Because of this, the problem of mixed abilities in the same room seems absolutely natural, and it is the idea of teaching a unitary lesson that seems odd." Now, I like this quotation, but I don't agree with it 100%. But I agree with this idea that we are teaching 30 individuals at the same time. And that is kind of the problem, right? Because all of our students are on a different planet. They're kind of feeling different things. They're thinking different things. I have a funny picture here from a comic from England from 1960, 1970. This kind of gives an idea of how every student is just doing their own thing. They're not necessarily listening to the teacher. Everybody is in their own world. Now, of course, that's very difficult to deal with in the classroom because if there are 20 students and only one teacher, I created this slide. This is my solution to the problem of teaching lots of different individuals in the class. What I try to do is divide myself. Look, here's 2 Daves, 3 Daves, 4 Daves, 5 Daves. Maybe teaching would be easier if teachers, we could divide ourselves into 20 different teachers and have one different teacher for one different student. Now, I think you'll agree with me that this is unfortunately impossible, right? We can't do this. And that kind of makes me think that the problem of different personalities, I think the real challenge of being a teacher of teenagers or of primary school teachers or of adults is that we are doing two things at the same time. We are teaching, like Mario Vrumvalucri said, we are teaching maybe 25, 30 different personalities, but they do all form one group. And I think part of education is that students realize that maybe in their homes, they are the king or the queen of their houses. But in the classroom, they are one of many people. Do you ever have the situation where you have one student who expects you to answer every single question they have all the time? And you have to explain, I am not only here to answer your questions, I have to answer questions from 25 different people. And I think part of education is helping young people realize that they are, yes, they are very special, but that also at the same time, the whole class is special and that you are there for the whole class. And we're going to try to balance both things, but that sometimes they have to be patient, they have to wait, and they have to listen to you. And I think some students find that very difficult to realize because maybe at home they are pampered, yeah, that they are like the special one in their homes, but everybody is special in my class. So everybody also sometimes has to wait. So it's part of the life of the classroom that we have this mixture of a whole class, but lots of individuals in the class. Now, what I'm going to try and suggest today is ways that we as teachers can make life easier for ourselves and for our students. So little tricks or big tricks to help us to deal with the individuals as well as the whole class. Now, my step number one to this question is we could say that it's a problem, but my idea is that we need to love the problem. In other words, think for a second. I think somebody said this before about personalities. Imagine a class with 25 students and every student was the same. Every student had the same interests, the same personality. They were all exactly the same. I think actually as a teacher, I would find that quite boring. I like the variety in my classroom. I like having some students who are quiet and some students who are loud, some who are funny, some who are serious, some who are maybe really motivated in English, but some who are not, and I'm going to try to motivate them. So I think the first thing is to be aware that having different students in the classroom is a good thing. I've shown this slide in many webinars that I've done in the last year, so maybe some of you already know the answers. But otherwise, can you try and guess what are the words that begin with R, A, and C on this slide? It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to R, A, and C those differences. What do you think those three words are? In the chat box, can you give me some guesses? Any guess will be good. Oh, that's very good. That's Sergey. Recognize, accept, react, act, correct. Those are nice words as well. Recognize, accept, respect is a good word too. It's not correct, those differences, actually. No, it's not correct. So the word that's most difficult, I think, is the C word, but maybe in some ways it's the most important word that I'm going to say today. It's not cope. That's a good guess, Ala, but it's not. Connect, challenge, no. It's a very, very positive word. It's something that you do when you have a party. What do you do when you have a party? Could be cheer. That's a good answer. Celebrate, Allah. That is exactly the word. Okay. So the original quotation, which was from a black writer from the United States, it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. And I think that's a really nice way of putting it, right? We are different. And that's okay. It's okay that everybody is different. Everybody in my classroom is unique. So we should recognize that they are unique. We should accept that they are unique. and we should celebrate it. It's good. It's good that we're all different. It's good that we all have something unique to offer. That's what life is all about, right? And I think that this quotation for me is a very important quotation to think about life, but also a very important quotation to think about our classroom. Let's recognize the differences between our students. Let's accept them, and let's celebrate them. So how can we celebrate them? Well, when I write my books, I try and celebrate this difference by showing the richness and diversity of the world through our texts. So I want to have texts which will interest all of our students, also get them to be curious about the world. The title of the new edition of Gateway is Gateway to the World. The idea is that we are opening our students' horizons to the world in general. And part of that, for example, are these 2 pages here, which are learning about different cultures. So, for example, we have this text which is about traveling, why traveling is good, why meeting new people, meeting new people with different cultural backgrounds is really positive, because we can basically learn about the world, learn about different ways of thinking. And the reason I think why I love teaching teenagers still, after teaching for 36, 37 years, is because we are helping students to learn about English, but we're also helping them to step outside of the classroom, step outside of school, and learn about the world which is outside. And I think we need to stress, how rich our world is with all of the differences that I've just mentioned now. Now, we've got this idea of learning about different cultures. Have you ever heard this expression before? Okay, this idea of you have to see it to be it. This is a very popular concept, for example, in the United Kingdom, where, for example, particularly maybe people from different backgrounds, different racial backgrounds, maybe they read a novel, they read a book, but there are no characters who are from their particular country or their particular cultural background. Now, when I started writing books, I wrote my first book 30 years ago. It was very difficult to find good texts about, for example, women examples of doing great things like art. This is a great book, by the way. If you're interested in art, this is a bestseller from the United Kingdom, The Story of Art Without Men, right? So when we think of famous painters, we always think of, Picasso, Dali, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, but we forget that, of course, there have been many, many, many famous women artists that, for example, I particularly didn't necessarily know about. Black heroes, people from different cultures who are examples who we can learn from. So in my books now, of course, I always try to have texts where people can see that there are role models for whoever you are. In this case, we've got some really interesting texts about women who've traveled around the world. Ukrainians, definitely, Svetlana, and you're going to see some very interesting material later on in the break between my 2 talks. So the whole idea here of 2 women who traveled around the world, one of them who traveled around the world in 1894, and another who was the youngest person to travel to every single country in the world. And that was an American lady called Lexi Alford. So in other words, giving texts which are texts that our students can aspire to, things that they can think about, things that they can realize that everybody has great potential. So I think that this is like a key thing. One of the new elements, because my second talk today, I'll be talking about Gateway to the World. One of the new elements that we have in Gateway to the World following Gateway 2nd edition is videos, which are in the middle of each unit, which are from obviously one of the most important British broadcasting companies. And we've got some really nice videos which I think bring different topics to life. I'm going to share one of them with you now, which is giving our students the idea that, of course, everybody can decide the particular type of career that they want to follow, regardless of their sex or their background. And this is a very poetic video, I think. There's not much speaking, but it's a very beautiful video. I'm going to show it to you, and afterwards in the chat box, you can tell me what you think of this video. Let's watch it.
There's been a lot of pressure in my life to go back to school, get a different job, do something that is safer for me as a female. There are some men that just, they don't want to see you there. It's not a woman's place to be on a lobster boat. And it's always a shock to see that people don't see it as normal. I'm just a girl that works in a male industry. That pressure only makes me want to do what I'm doing more. I can't see myself not on a boat at this point. The one thing about being out there is that it never, ever looks the same. There's moments where you see these incredible sunrises and sunsets. There's times when the ocean will turn white, the sky is white, and it all kind of blurs together. And you see the moon rises, you see the stars. You can leave all your problems at the dock, and you know that all you have to go do is this job.
Okay, I hope you could all hear and see that video properly. It's a very calm video. I think it's visually very beautiful. The music is very nice. But as somebody has just said here, an example of a job which is not traditionally female. I think this video is very beautiful, but is also very, very powerful. It's very powerful. She is very clearly stating that this is what she wants to do. This is her life. Whatever people think about it, she wants to do this job, and she is not willing to change her desires because of what other people expect. And yeah, I'm enjoying the comments that you're writing there. It's very, she loves seeing the ocean. It never looks the same. And yes, as Victoria has said there, a happy person. She's happy doing what she wants to do. And I think that for our teenage students, it's nice to have these models where you kind of think, when you're a teenager, you might have dreams, and then you think, well, I can't achieve my dreams because people say this and people say that. And I think this video is what I call quietly powerful. It's quietly powerful. It's not making a big statement. It's simply saying, this is what I want to do. and this is what I'm going to do. I think that message actually is as important for our male students too, that they decide what they think they want to do, and men can also break different stereotypes. So I think it's a video that is very powerful in its way. And when we talk about inclusion, diversity, then it's allowing different people to choose different things that they want to do in life. Yes, Sophia, that's a very good comment. Exactly. So I particularly like this video. So, right, we're talking about inclusion and diversity. And I've already said that for me, the difficult part, the magic, I suppose, of being a teacher is that we are teaching one whole class, but also we are teaching all of the individuals in that class. So we're doing two things at the same time. And I think that to be a good teacher, what we need to do is to try and find out what we can about the individuals in our class. Now, I'm going to share with you, maybe it's actually my favorite activity of all time. And if you follow my Facebook page, you will know that I have shared this activity many, many times. But it's a great activity for you to do now if you are about to begin a new course with new students in your classroom. My favorite activity, okay, for the first week or 2 weeks of class is t-shirts. Now, how many t-shirts do you think your teenage students have? Like 1, 5, 10? How many t-shirts? A rough calculation. How many t-shirts do you think your students have? 12, 15, a lot, up to 10, 7, 10. All students tend to have t-shirts. We all have t-shirts, right? And of course, what I realized a long time ago is that t-shirts tell stories about us. There are millions of t-shirts in the world, but we all choose to buy certain t-shirts. Why? Because they kind of reflect our interests, our hobbies, the things that we are interested in. So at the beginning of every school year, I give a demonstration first, and I'm going to do it back to front today. But usually I bring in 3 t-shirts, and I show my students 3 t-shirts. In fact, I'm going to show you my 3 t-shirts now. Okay, these are my 3 t-shirts. And I show them to the class, and I say, okay, why do you think these t-shirts are special to me? Why are they important and significant to me? Okay, and they guess in pairs, in small groups. Can anybody guess, why is my Spider-Man t-shirt special to me? Does anybody know? Why do you think I like my Spider-Man t-shirt? A present from my kid, that's an interesting one. They show your inner world. Karina, you are actually probably exactly correct. I like comics. Yeah, I'm a fan of comics. You are actually correct. Ala, I would like to think that I'm brave, but maybe I'm not very brave. I will admit that in fact, I'm a bit of a chicken. Okay, I'm not very brave, but I am a fan. So I'm a fan of of Spider-Man, and I'm a fan of comics. I also like the art of comics. So, and I think I began to like reading because I liked reading comics. And I think I began to like art because I started reading comics. So for me, Spider-Man was very important in my development. I began to read. I kind of identified with parts of Spider-Man's character. The second t-shirt is difficult to read, okay? But it says Penny Lane and Strawberry Field. And I don't know does anybody know where is Penny Lane and where is Strawberry Field? Does anybody know? The Beatles, yes. Thank you, Anastasia. The Beatles. And the Beatles, of course, are from... Where are the Beatles from? Liverpool. Thank you, Anastasia. Yes, Olena. Very good. Yeah, the Beatles. And so, for example, this t-shirt is very special to me because this is where I grew up. My school was very close to Penny Lane, and I grew up close to there. My mum, who is 93, she lives next to Strawberry Field. So the Beatles are part of my childhood. Liverpool is part of my childhood. And so it's very special to me. So this t-shirt is important to me. Right, now this is interesting. Marina, you say the third one is amazing. Any ideas? Why is the third t-shirt significant to me? Does anybody have any ideas? Why do you think I have shown you that I like gardening? That's a good idea, Anastasia. Hawaiian relax. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. I like traveling. It's bright. Holiday shirt, favorite vacation. Right, these are all really good ideas. I didn't get married in Hawaii. Actually, do you know what, Tatiana? My wedding anniversary was yesterday, and I have been married for 36 years, and we celebrated in the place where we got married. So this shirt, I'm going to tell you now that in fact, I do not really like this shirt. I have never worn this shirt except for one occasion. Okay, one occasion. And I'm going to explain it to you at the end of this talk. So you have to stay to the end of the talk to find out why this t-shirt is special to me. Okay, now I do this as an example with my students. I show 3 shirts and then I say to them, I want you to bring in 3 shirts in the next week, and you're going to explain to the class why they are important to you. Now you discover amazing things about your students, okay? You discover lots of amazing things. I discovered that this student here, he likes heavy metal music, which is quite typical, but he also plays heavy metal guitar. So that was a really interesting thing to discover. This young lady in the middle showed me a shirt which was to do with a social awareness organization about drinking and driving, which I thought was really interesting. It was something which was important to her. And the third student on the end of the slide, he brought this shirt, which is from a summer camp. He went to a summer camp in the holidays, and his friends signed and gave messages on his shirts. You find all sorts of amazing information about your students. It's a nice activity because you can hide behind your t-shirt. Yeah, so if a student is shy, they hide behind the t-shirt, but they explain. I ask the rest of the class to listen and to think of one question that they would like to ask to the question who is question to the person who is explaining the t-shirts. So for me, this is one of the this is one of my favorite activities at the beginning of the school year. It takes a few weeks because I ask, for example, 4 or 5 people each day to explain their t-shirts. You can't do it in one day. You need to take a few days to do it. But for me, it is time really well spent because you discover some amazing information about your students. And I think it's important that you are an example first, because you are breaking the ice, you are giving a model, and you are explaining how you want them to do the activity afterwards. Obviously, the students will choose the t-shirts that they feel happy about explaining. If they don't feel comfortable, they should not bring in that particular t-shirt, okay? So by doing this activity at the beginning of the year, I'm finding out information about my students that will be useful for me throughout the year to kind of get to know my students better. Now, I think that one of the important things in a class of 20-25 adolescents is making sure that everybody has the freedom to speak. Everybody has the confidence to speak. And I think that this is something that I realized a while ago, that sometimes there are some very quiet students in our classes. And I think we need to respect those quiet students. I don't know if any of you have seen this TED Talk, but I really recommend you to watch it after this session or in the next few weeks. The Power of Introverts by Susan Cain. Susan Cain has written 2 great books about quiet people. She makes the argument that many people today in the world, the louder they are, the more attention we pay to them. But quiet people have often really great ideas and are sometimes just a little bit quiet about sharing those ideas. And I think, and I'm going to make a terrible, terrible, terrible generalization now, but in your classes, who tends to dominate in your classes, the boys or the girls? This is a big generalization, okay? But I'm just going to see what you say. Are the boys or the girls louder? The girls are louder, boys are louder, girls, boys, girls, boys, it depends. Okay, well, that's good. Right. I'm not sure what the majority is saying. It's kind of 50-50, right? What Susan Cain says in her book is that it's often the girls, for example, who are shyer about giving their opinions, expressing their opinions when there are boys in the class. But whether they're boys or the girls, it's the same point. I think it's really important that we try and encourage everybody to be able to speak in the classroom. Now, we have in Gateway to the World, I will explain this later as well, but we have collaborative projects. And in these collaborative projects, we try and develop certain skills. One of those skills is working collaboratively on the project. And if you look at this collaboration box here, it says, when you work in a team, it's essential to listen to everyone and let everybody contribute. Sometimes one or two people can dominate in a group, but the best teams have a balance between everybody, including the quiet members of the team. And I think this is really important. When we get our students to work in groups, some students, whether they're boys or they're girls, it makes no difference. Some students tend to dominate and some students become very, very passive and very, very quiet. And what I'm trying to do in this case is encourage everybody to have a go and to encourage maybe the more more expressive students to encourage the quieter students to get involved. And we're also teaching language to do this. So with useful language, that's a good idea. But what do you think, Sarah? Let's listen to Oscar, who hasn't spoken yet. It's your turn to speak next. In other words, encouraging students really to involve everybody in the group. And I think if we're talking about inclusion and diversity, this idea of getting students to help one another to get everybody involved, I think is really, really important and really useful. In my second session today, I'll be talking about collaborative projects and how they can also help with mixed abilities. But I think this is going to be really important, this idea of encouraging everybody in the group to collaborate and to say their opinion. Okay, I hope you're all still with me. And I'm going to continue with the question of, I've just mentioned this word, mixed abilities. I think project work is a great way to deal with mixed abilities because everybody can bring something to the table, as we say in English. So some students might be very good at presenting the project. Some students might be very good at doing the research. Some students might be very good at doing the writing part of the project. So in other words, I think mixed abilities is a great way of each student showing their own ability. Maybe somebody is really good at doing artwork and they can do a beautiful, some kind of illustration for the project. But basically, everybody is bringing their particular strength to the group. Now, I always say, because if you look at books and if you watch talks, often people talk about mixed ability in singular, but I always call it mixed abilities. I don't know if anybody can guess why I call it mixed abilities. But the reason is, basically, is that I do not really believe that some students are good at English and some students are bad at English. I think some students are very good, for example, at some parts of English, like maybe speaking and writing, but maybe many of those students are not so good possibly at grammar. Or you have some students are very good at grammar, but they're not very good at speaking. So in my opinion, it's not that students are good or bad at English. I think each student has different strengths in English. They might be better at some things than at others. You know, occasionally you find a student who's good at everything, and occasionally you find a student who's not very strong at everything. But in my experience, somebody always have something that they can do quite well in English, and something maybe that they do less well. Yeah. So I think that this, in the classroom, the real question for me often becomes a thing called fast finishers. Do you ever talk about fast finishers in your class? You know, we often have this expression, and in the classroom, we often say something like this, right? Can we all stop now, please? It doesn't matter if you haven't finished, okay? Sometimes I say this. In fact, maybe quite often I say this, but I wonder, is it true that it doesn't matter if you haven't finished? Sorry. I'm jumping. Sorry. I pressed the wrong button there. Is it really true that it doesn't matter if you haven't finished? I personally think that if every time you do an activity, you stop when the best students have finished, then that's a bad thing, because the less strong students are finishing early. They never get to the end of an activity. So I think that it's important that everybody kind of does finish the main activity. Yeah, as Alexandra has said, yeah, for those who haven't finished, it matters. I agree. So I think that one of the keys to teaching mixed abilities is to have activities ready for the student who is working slower. So this is a page from Gateway to the World A2. It's a vocabulary page. And on the page, we've got different activities. But you'll notice that at the end of the page, we have this arrow which says reach higher. Now, the idea of this activity is that if you have a student who finishes, for example, exercise 4 very quickly, they've done it well, they have nothing to do, they start getting bored, they start to distract their student. So what we have in Gateway to the World in many pages is this arrow which says reach higher. And it takes you to a page at the back of the book. This is the page 146. And we have an activity. For those students who finished fast, we have an activity to keep them busy doing something interesting. In this case, if you can see that on the screen, it's doing an alphabet of food where you have to write A for apple, B for broccoli, in this case, could be banana, C for carrot. Could somebody give me a type of fruit, a type of food which begins with the letter D? Any ideas? D for donuts, right? Dips, that's nice as well. Yeah, donuts. Dragon fruit. Oh, dumplings. That is a good idea. Sergey, that was a very nice idea. Dumplings, dairy products. Okay, E. Dill, that's nice too. E. Egg, of course. Egg is the eggplant is nice too. Yeah, those are the two obvious ones, right? Now, this is a nice activity. In fact, I love doing this activity in general as a great vocabulary revision activity. But it's a really nice activity to use with your students. But basically, what I'm suggesting here is that this is an activity that will keep your fast finishers busy, motivated, engaged, interested, so that they're not getting bored. So on many pages of Gateway to the World, we have the same idea. I particularly think that reading is one of the biggest areas that is problematic, because some students finish reading really quickly. They've answered all the questions, they've got everything right, but they are bored. So at the end of the reading page, we have again, if you look at the bottom of the screen, we have the reach higher arrow, and that takes them to the back of the book. And here we have an extra comprehension task to keep our students busy. Okay, so we've got something again for them to do. Now, some people I know think that it's not fair again if some of the students, the fast finishers, are doing this exercise, but not the other students. But if you like, what you can do is that you can give this exercise for the whole of the class for homework. So everybody is doing more reading comprehension. So you can decide it could be exclusively for fast finishers, or you could give it to everybody to do afterwards. So the idea of the activity is that it is very flexible. Another thing that you can do for fast finishers, which I think is really useful, and I explained this in an international webinar quite recently, when you read this text, at the end of the text, if somebody has finished and they don't have anything to do, get them to Google the people, the places, the events in the text. In this case, we mention a photographer called Greg Siegel. And Greg Siegel has an amazing project of taking photographs of students from around the world and surrounding them with the food that they eat in 1 week. So if you finish the activity, if some students finish the reading activity first, you can get them then to Google this man, find out some of his photos, find out some of what he did. That's going to keep those students busy, interested, motivated, and they can give feedback to the rest of the class. Yes, Anastasia, they are great photographs and they are beautiful. They're visually beautiful and of course fascinating, right? Finding out the difference between what somebody eats maybe in Thailand, Indonesia, Ukraine, the United States, Africa. By the way, one interesting thing about this text is that it explains that 5 African countries are amongst the top countries for a healthy diet, which is interesting, right? So obviously, for example, maybe the United States, the United Kingdom, Mexico are maybe not the healthiest diets in the world. So there's lots to talk about, lots to look at, lots to think about. And that's one way, again, of keeping our fast finishers busy, involved, and motivated. Now, I've got a few other games that I use in my classroom to keep fast finishers busy. Whatever activity you're doing, there are things that we can do in our classroom to keep the fast finishers busy. This is one of my favorite activities. I call it the word chain. We go from rose to rise, rise to rice, rice to nice. Can you tell me in the chat box, what is happening each time? How many words are changing from one word to the next? One letter. Thank you, Sophia. One letter is changing. Is it always the first letter, for example? No, it isn't, Anastasia. So that's important. You can change any letter at any moment, okay? You change each time one letter, whichever letter, Svetlana. Yes, a random letter. So, for example, from nice, what would be a good word to follow nice? Mice. Thank you, Svetlana. We could go from mice, or we could go to dice. That's another nice one, yeah. Lice we could go to, yeah. Okay, you get the idea then. You could change one letter each time. So for example, I put this on one corner of my blackboard. And when I finish an activity, I tell my students, okay, if you finish the reading, if you finish the writing, if you finish this activity and you don't have anything to do, I want you to continue this list. How long does this activity last? Well, it lasts forever, right? Because you can go on for as long as possible. You keep on thinking of as many words as possible. You can think of 10 words, 15 words, 20 words. You just keep on continuing one letter at a time. Any of the 4 letters you can change one at a time. It's a great motivating activity for students who have finished doing the core activity. Okay, I hope that's clear. Here's another activity. This activity, I put this on the board, 4 different circles, and I tell my students to write as many words as possible and this is important, you always begin in the middle, and then you go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So you're making 4-letter words, and all of the 4-letter words have to begin with the letter B or W. So for example, one bark. Thank you, Katerina. You're very fast. Bark, bird, exactly. Any more that you can see? There are actually lots and lots and lots of words here. Remember, it's all brown, no, because there are only 4 letters, right? Ball, yes. Walk, yes. Wool, yes. Word, yes. Exactly. So again, I write this on the board, and then when a student finishes fast, I tell them to start doing this, okay? Very simple activity. You just have to make it clear that you always begin in the middle, which means every word begins with B and W, B or W, right? So kind would not be possible, no, because you always have to begin in the middle, yeah? And one last activity, which I'm sure you all know, we used to play this as children in England. How many words can you make with the letters in encyclopedia? So you take any letters, you can't double any letters, you can't add any letters, but for example, from encyclopedia, we could make the word pen, we could make the word pan, cycle. Thank you, Katerina, again. Yeah, we could make circle would be good. Yeah, circle would be great. Pad would be perfect. Panda, nice. Yeah, exactly. So you get the idea. You would simply, in the corner of your blackboard, write the word encyclopedia and then get them to do this. And I think I can tell from the chat box, I think, that you're enjoying doing this. And I think your students will enjoy doing it too. By the way, these activities also make great warmers at the beginning of the class. Perfect. Okay. Now, another thing that we can do for mixed abilities is have exercises or worksheets at different levels. You could prepare these, you could photocopy them, you could scan them. In Gateway to the World, the workbook, all of the activities in the workbook have a star system. So 1 means that the activity is easier, and 3 means that it is more difficult. So that is a nice way just of getting students to realize the difference between the level of activities. In Gateway to the World, we also have tests at 2 different levels. So that is something that you might want to play with. And then we have the idea, which I think is really important, we are talking more and more about social and emotional learning. And I think particularly, obviously, your students are in particular need of help for social and emotional learning, feeling better about themselves, feeling more positive, getting them to develop empathy as well, helping each other. And in Gateway to the World, we do this, getting students to think about thinking about others. Okay. Thank you, Irina, and sorry that you have to leave now. Thank you for coming. So in this section here, making friends, getting students to help people who feel lonely, people who feel maybe less good about themselves. And I will explain in my second talk after the break today. I'm going to explain more about how in Gateway to the World we develop this idea of social and emotional learning and helping students to think about others, so that when we are in the classroom and maybe there is somebody who's finding something more difficult, the other students can empathize and maybe help that student. And lastly, before we have our break, I mentioned flipped classroom videos. I think I mentioned this before. And in Gateway 2nd edition, we have flipped classroom videos. These are a great way of helping students to learn outside the classroom. So, for example, any student who didn't maybe understand your grammar explanation, they can watch the video afterwards, and they can watch it as many times as necessary and find out more about the grammar point. I think all students learn grammar at different speeds. And I think grammar is a good example of this, that some students get the grammar immediately and some take a lot longer. Now, I know that a lot of students have watched my grammar videos. They often imitate me by holding their hands like this, right? I thought that I would finish this first session. By the way, yes, it's not a break for you, okay? It's not a break for you. It's only a break for me. So for 15 minutes, Ina will be explaining some interesting things to you about Gateway to the World. And then I'll be back after a quarter of an hour with my own session. Now, I showed you before an amazing Hawaiian shirt, correct? And I didn't explain why it was significant to me. It was significant to me because I wore a similar Hawaiian shirt in this video now that you're going to watch. I hope you enjoy watching the video. Let's watch it, and you tell me after the video what grammar was I teaching, okay? Let's watch the video.
Hi everyone, welcome to this Grammar with Dave video. You know, personally, I don't have any regrets about the past. But lots of people do, you know, as they get older. I read somewhere that these are the 4 most typical regrets that people have about their past. Number 1 is, I wish I'd travelled more and seen the world. Number 2 is, if only I hadn't taken everything so seriously all the time. And number 3, I'd rather not have spent so much time working. I'd sooner have spent more time with my family and friends. And finally, number 4 is, I should have believed in myself more and had more confidence in my own abilities. Let's look at those 4 sentences again. We know that each of these sentences expresses a regret about the past. We can use I wish and if only with the past perfect. We use I'd rather or I'd sooner with have and the past participle. If we're talking about something that we did and now regret having done it, we say I'd rather not have with the past participle. And finally, we can also use should or shouldn't have with the past participle to talk about past regrets. Well, as I said before, personally, I don't have any regrets about my past. I've travelled all around the world and seen some amazing places. I've spent a lot of time with my family and friends. I try not to take things too seriously, and you know, generally, I do believe in myself and my abilities. Okay, I have a confession. I'm going to be totally honest with you. There is something in the past that I regret. I wish I hadn't chosen to wear this shirt to make my video today. I'm really sorry about that. I don't know what I was thinking. But thanks for watching anyway. Bye!
Okay, so you can see, yeah, that was the joke at the end of my video, that I wouldn't usually wear that shirt. Actually, it's true. When I look at it now, it doesn't look too bad, right? It doesn't look too bad. Maybe I should start wearing Hawaiian shirts. Maybe at least on holiday. Not maybe when I'm making videos, but for the holidays, yes. Okay. I'm glad you seem to like watching that. That was obviously from a high level, okay? That was from I think it was from the B2 plus. And as you said, it was third conditionals, unreal conditionals, and past regrets. But the videos are designed specially so that you can use them in the classroom if you like, but also they're very good for mixed abilities, and students can watch them again later, and they can watch them as many times as they need to so that they are at the same speed as other students in the classroom. Okay, this is the end of my first talk. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Ina, you're going to take over, yeah, for a quarter of an hour, and then I'm straight back.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm taking over, really, and my talk will be a mixture of English and Ukrainian. I'm starting sharing my screen straight away. Sorry, just a second. I have the same problem as all. Now that's it. Okay, my talk is about Gateway to Ukraine. На самому початку нашої конференції Девід сказав, що дійсно Gateway to the World – це курс унікально створений для України. І я хотіла б трошечки з вами поспілкуватися ось з якого приводу. Коли ми говоримо про українознавчий компонент нашої програми, яку ми зобов'язані виконати, традиційно в переважній більшості підручників, посібників, якими ми користуємося, традиційний підхід пропонується вчителю і учням-підліткам. А саме, є певний якийсь текст для читання, він містить певну інформацію, і цей зміст у текстах дуже часто є стереотипним. І знов-таки традиційно, що ми з цим робимо? Ми читаємо, ми відповідаємо на запитання, іноді ми просимо наших учнів зробити переказ, і, звичайно, ми пропонуємо говоріння. Що запропонував Gateway to the World? Перш ніж я це покажу, бо це дійсно, ну, я не побоюсь цього слова, це революційний підхід до українознавчого компоненту. Перш ніж я покажу, в чому тут є революційність, я прошу вас у чаті написати зазвичай, коли ми бачимо ось ці компоненти нашої програми: географічне положення, загальні відомості про Україну, Київ – столиця України, великі міста, моє рідне місто. Що ми сподіваємося побачити у підручнику з цього приводу? Reading text, Ukrainian cuisine, example text, model text, some reading material, modern photos, true facts about our country, maybe some interview, but mostly історичні факти, якісь дати. Так, що зробив Gateway to the World? Він цей курс підійшов нестандартно до кожної нашої програмової теми. І я хочу дати вам відчути ось цей Gateway to Ukraine, to the world of Ukraine. Візьмемо ось цю сферу спілкування. Знову секунду, я повернуся назад. General information about Ukraine, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, big cities, and my hometown. Це приклад з першого рівня Gateway to the World. Так називається юніт, він 11-й, цей тематичний розділ Gateway to Ukraine. І це повноцінний розділ, це не один якийсь урок або якийсь один текст, але він присвячений саме ось цій частині нашої програми. І, наприклад, пропонуються ось такі завдання. Compare Odessa and Plymouth. Write similarities and differences. Або учні слухають подкаст, якщо ми говоримо про загальні відомості про Україну, учні слухають подкаст і виконують matching activity. І слухати ми його зараз, звичайно, не будемо, але я покажу вам аудіоскрипт. Я вірю, що ви впізнали ці geographical features of our country. Ми бачимо тут Daffodil Valley, ми бачимо тут Mr. Canyon, ми бачимо тут Siniver Lake, ми бачимо тут Олешки Sands. Чесно кажучи, я не спостерігала таких деталей і такого розмаїття в інших ресурсах. Коли ми відкриваємо такий же самий розділ, але в робочому зошиті, він не дублює того, що було в підручнику, і з'являються міста великі і не дуже великі в нашій країні, яким, на превеликий жаль, в інших курсах не приділяється увагу. І ми бачимо, що тут є і Чернівці, і ось My Hometown, тут текст, основа для того, щоб далі учні розповідали про своє рідне місто, це місто Ворохта. Ідемо у другий рівень, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, major landmarks, і так у вигляді онлайн такого туристичного путівника Golden Gate, Kyiv Founders Monument, Motherland Monument, яка вже перейменовано, звичайно, і тут вже робота вчителя, на щастя або на жаль, але події відбуваються швидше, ніж виходять підручники. В робочому зошиті, наприклад, цього ж самого рівня, коли ми говоримо про geographical features and general information, вони пишуть туристичний путівник, але зразком до цього туристичного путівника є путівник по Єнічеськ Лейк. У третьому рівні та ж сама тема, а ми знаємо і пам'ятаємо, що ці теми так чи інакше вони повторюються з класу у клас. Та ж сама тема представлена у формі Exciting Film and Locations. І, наприклад, коли я читала цей невеличкий текст, а це формат веб-сайт advertisement, я була приємно здивована, що, виявляється, є ціла низка відомих фільмів, які знімалися в Україні, але не українськими, а британськими або американськими режисерами. У четвертому рівні знов-таки та ж сама тема, але через Beautiful Historical Ukraine. І голосування, яке інформацію взято з реального голосування, і тут не тільки пам'ятні місця міста Києва, але тут і є, звичайно, Києво-Печерська лавра, але тут і Кам'янець-Подільський, тут і Хортиця Айленд, тут і Хотин Фортрес, тут і Мерхелева Рідж. Наступна тема з нашої програми Holidays and Traditions and Food, Traditional Ukrainian Cuisine. Звичайно, ми всі знаємо, яка у нас традиційна кухня, але я хотіла б показати вам, яким чином автор поєднав ці дві теми, зробив їх органічно поєднаними і не дуже стереотипно традиційними, хоча починається в першому рівні саме з традиційних різдвяних страв і святкування Різдва, як ми можемо побачити. Формат різний, тобто тут і подкасти, тут і діалоги, які ми слухаємо, тут і завдання на усне мовлення. Але далі на уроках, які присвячені розвитку усного мовлення, developing speaking, вже ми переходимо і міксуємо традиційні українські страви з великодніми святами і розширюємо. Тобто у нас серед наших традиційних страв є не тільки різдвяні страви, а є ще інші. І фіналом, я думаю, ви здогадаєтесь, що на уроках письма учні, спираючись на зразок, вони пишуть рецепт традиційної української страви. Коли ми переходимо у другий рівень, знов-таки у нас є така тема традиції святкування, державні свята, традиційні свята. І, чесно кажучи, зазвичай, коли ми говоримо про наші традиційні свята або державні свята, ми згадуємо, поправте мене, якщо я помиляюся, і в інших підручниках є і інші свята, але ми зазвичай говоримо про Різдво, Великдень, Новий рік, День Незалежності. Ось такі 4 свята, які завжди